Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Home Tech. I'm Seth Johnson, and this week, Jason Griffin is actually on vacation, so I'm going to try and take the show solo tonight and talk a little bit about a system that we talk about on the show all the time, and I think, sometimes Jason and I and, everybody else that we've had on the show, we're really into technology, and sometimes we don't take a step back and realize that there are a lot of people out there who don't play in the same field that we do. They don't actually go out and they do the crazy research and live inside these products like we do. So I think it's a good idea if we kind of take a step back and talk a little bit about Sonos. It's a very popular product for very good reasons. And like I said, we talk about it on the show all the time. And there's a couple of people who've reached out to us over the years and time and said, hey, I'd like to put together a system. It needs to have A, B, and C. I've been looking at Sonos, but I don't quite wrap my head around it completely. And of course, I'm always on Twitter. If you reach out to me or Jason, I'm sure both of us, we would reply to you as soon as we could. But maybe just getting kind of, like a Sonos 101 type class here and go over everything I could possibly think about when it comes to the basics behind Sonos and what having and owning a Sonos system actually entails, and how do I wire up for a Sonos system. This actually stems from a great conversation I had with a gentleman, David Millsaps on Twitter, was sending me some direct messages and going back and forth, and I kind of realized pretty quickly, like he grasped, he understood what he was trying to do, but he was missing a couple of little small tidbits of information. I hope I got that over to him, and I think I did. Like he seemed pretty comfortable with the direction he was heading, and he just kind of needed that, external validation. I think, David, if you're still having problems, shoot me another DM, and I'd be more than happy to answer questions. And that goes for anybody. If you have a question about anything, just, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to answer. Even if it's basic and it sounds dumb, listen, we've heard everything. You will not come up with a question that we haven't heard or had to answer in the past, 10 or 15 years of our careers. So don't feel embarrassed. This is what we're here for. Reach out. Let us know if you have any questions. It helps inform us on what we need to talk about too. So I'd encourage you to go over to HomeTech.fm/feedback, fill out the feedback form. That actually emails Jason and I both, and whoever makes it to the email first, it's usually Jason, by the way, they'll email back and at least hopefully answer your question. So let's get started. Let's kind of do a deep dive into Sonos. And first, what the heck is Sonos? A lot of people have that initial question to me. Believe it or not, even with all the marketing and geek street cred, Sonos still is kind of a mystery to a lot of people. So at its root level, Sonos is basically a media player. Like it's a fancy iPod, right? You can play your MP3s and your digital music, but you can also go out and play online streaming services. So Sonos systems require that internet connection. There's a number of different ways that you get internet into Sonos, and we'll go over those here in a couple minutes. But keep in mind, if you have a Sonos system, you have to have high-speed internet, and not only do you have to have that high-speed internet, you're probably not going to want to be metered. I had a buddy who decided to go ahead and try and set up his Sonos system using a cellular connection, and that worked for about a month for him before he realized he was using way too much data, and he ended up having to shut it down. And just unfortunate where his house was, he had no internet access. It was kind of like a beach cabin type situation. He actually moved, so he was able to get internet at his new house and start using the Sonos system on high-speed internet, which is really what you want. So Sonos is strictly that media player. It comes in a bunch of different flavors, but I want to talk a little bit about how all the Sonos devices talk together, because that's a very important product piece that they have, that they spend a lot of time doing, and they got it right, in my opinion. They use a wireless protocol, I guess, we'll call it that, called SonosNet. And it is a secure, encrypted, peer-to-peer wireless mesh technology that they've come up with. So what that means is, and we talk about this a lot on the show, but what that means is if you plug in a Sonos device into the outlet right here, and you go across the house and you plug in another Sonos device, they'll talk to each other. But not only will they talk to each other, the one across the house will repeat the signal to another device if you were to plug that in. And that's really cool. That's something that not many devices have done for Wi-Fi and gotten right. And that's really the trick. So when we talk about Sonos and the product itself, really the backbone of Sonos is this Sonos Net. It's a wireless mesh protocol, completely secure. Like if you turned on your phone or your computer and tried to connect to Sonos Net, you wouldn't even see it. It doesn't broadcast. It's not there. Your neighbors aren't going to get online and go into it. It's completely secure and set up off to the side. You will never see it. There is a trick to figuring out some bugs that will go later on with Sonos Net. But keep in mind, it's secure, you won't see it, and normally you don't have to do anything to it to have it work correctly. And that is really what makes Sonos work. There's a couple of strange little limitations to Sonos Net. You can have 32 total zones on a Sonos system with 32 devices, period. You're not going to have any more than those 32 devices. And think about that. They offer a product called the Boost. If you need the Boost for your house and you have the need for 32 zones, your Boost is actually going to take one of those 32 devices away. And you're only going to be able to do 31 zones on that particular system. Now, I've been doing this integration stuff I was trying to figure it out. It's like between 10 and 15 years. I've been dealing with Sonos for at least 6 of those. And I've never come across this limitation in a system. If you have this problem, I'd say either Sonos isn't the right fit or the system isn't designed correctly. Because there's really no reason that anybody would come across that 32 zone / device limitation. You could, I guess, if you had a lot of surround sounds in a house and ran up a ton of audio zones, but there are better ways that you could make that system work that will work a lot better using control platforms like Control4 or Crestron to make sure that the integration is done across the board. I really don't want to go down that road because that's not really going to be the vast majority of Sonos people. Like I have a decent sized Sonos system at my house. I've got 2. And I think this is decent size. There's people probably listening that have more. But I've got 2 Play 3s. I've got a Play Bar and a Play 1. The 2 Play 3s, one sits in the master bed, one sits out in the family room. The Play Bar is obviously connected to a TV, and the Play 1 sits in the bathroom. Now, we'll go over all those model numbers here in a minute, but I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what I think an average Sonos system would look like. I may even be on a little bit on the small side, depending on how many rooms, but I think 4 players, 4 zones in a house is probably the sweet spot for Sonos. You could have a system that had, 8 zones of audio, no problem. Sonos can handle that. It can handle, like I do a lot of these 8-zone systems with surround sound. Sonos handles that perfectly. Like I said, it's a very flexible system, and that's key. So let's talk a little bit about arguably what's made Sonos so popular, and that's the streaming services that they offer. Sure, you can play your MP3s or your Apple Music library that's locally stored on an iTunes. You can play just about anything, but the best thing is you can reach out and play online services like, we'll go ahead and talk about the big ones here in the US, and a couple of them I know that are pretty big overseas, but this is really regional dependent because the big one here in the US is, of course, Pandora. That's what most people here in my clients, they're all signing up for is Pandora. If you haven't heard of Pandora, either in the U.S. or outside of the U.S., you've been under a rock somewhere. But Pandora, I'd say 90% of my customers already have a Pandora account. When I tell them that their music from their Pandora account can be added into Sonos just by they go in and you type your email address and your password in, They're totally excited about that. That's probably one of the best integrations that they have because it's just so popular here in the States. There is a link that I'll include in the show notes for streaming music. I think it changes per region that you're in. Like if you're in a different part of the world, you may have, you're not going to see Pandora for sure, but you'll see some other stuff on there. So I'll include that in the show note if you're curious to see some of the more popular music services that Sonos offers. Maybe check those out. But I'm going to run down a couple of key ones here that set up here in the States. TuneIn Radio is probably the first one you will see on a Sonos system because after you go through and you set everything up, one of the last questions it asks you is, what's your zip code? You type in your zip code here in the States. It goes out to TuneIn, figures out, oh, you live in Orlando, Florida. You live in New York. It will get the local radio stations and put them in a menu item for you. So now this is a great feature. For years as an integrator, I'd hook up these really expensive, sometimes, antennas for people's receivers. And then we'd go through the clunky process of trying to tune in radio stations, both AM and FM, which never worked, especially here in Florida. We had block walls. We had this crazy insulation people were doing a couple of years ago where it was like foil lining the house. This solved so many problems for us as integrators. But the biggest thing is for an end user or for anybody using a Sonos system, it's going to bring in those local radio stations, static free, both AM and FM. Now think about that. Like AM radio, static free. Yes, you're not going over the airwaves anymore. You're not dealing with power lines or anything crazy like that. You're going straight to the radio station, picking up their feed and bringing it into your house. Now, it's not going to sound all that great, and they never did, but at least you get something, and you get something in your house, and it works. The reason it doesn't sound great is because it's a little bit compressed, and some of the AM stations can be pretty compressed, but if you set that up with not getting any radio stations at all and getting radio stations, it's a great feature. Let's go ahead and just keep blowing through these. Amazon Music's a good one. Apple Music. Concert Vault. I thought this was pretty cool. They have concerts from live concert recordings from back in the 50s all the way to today. Deezer has 35 million songs inside of it. It's all HD music. I use Deezer a lot. I like it. Google Play Music. HotelRadio.fm. Now, I, as an integrator, I get this a lot. I'm sure there are a lot of people who own their own business, who have a public-facing business, like a restaurant or a hotel lobby, or maybe like a hair studio or something, and you want to play music in there. Well, you can do that, but you have to pay for licensing. And in the past, here in the States at least, there was a company called Muzak. They were around forever. I actually used to work for them back about probably 12 years ago, doing some of the service work in the Orlando market all the way up to Daytona. They basically have the commercial licensing done, and you will pay them for that. So it's a paid service. Both HotelRadio.fm and Mood, which has a colon after it, Mood is actually Muzak. They were purchased a while back, rebranded, I'm not sure, but Muzak eventually worked its way into Mood, and they're still around. So if you have like a small place that you just want to pop a speaker in, have some audio playing, check out those two, especially if you're in a public venue like a restaurant or a coffee shop or anything like that. Just want to make sure that you're not get busted and fined for playing licensed music. iHeartRadio, Last.fm, MLB Gameplay Audio. I thought that was pretty cool. Rhapsody, which is called Napster in most other markets. I think they just rebranded here in the States to being called Napster again for some strange reason. SiriusXM, which is great for people who already have the SiriusXM account, but it does require you to get a streaming subscription added onto it. Spotify and Tidal. Those are some of the big ones. There's also a number of other ones, and there's always beta services. If you ever want to see what's coming up next on a Sonos system, you should go into the betas and check that out. I think last I looked, there was like a smooth jazz channel and a classical music channel that was coming in. But if that's your thing, listen to that. It'd probably be pretty cool. Next thing I want to talk about is the clients. Now, clients are how you control the Sonos system itself. And I think most everyone can identify with just downloading an app to control it. There's an app for that. You can totally do that on both iPhone or iOS devices like an iPad, Android devices. But what's really cool, and I think a lot of people miss out on this, is that you can actually download a PC application for your Windows or Mac. And I use that all the time, especially because sometimes I'm sitting working at my computer. I hit the command space for the little search widget on the Mac. I hit type in Sonos real quick, hit enter. Sonos launches, and I can go in and control and change the station if it's annoying me. I don't even have to look for my phone or try and figure out where it is or launch the Sonos app on the phone. I can just do that all from a few button presses here on my computer. There's also some advanced settings in there. Remember, we talked about Sonos Net. If you are having problems with Sonos, you can actually go in on a computer and change the channel that Sonos Net's on. But those are the 4 clients that you could use to control the Sonos system. They all pretty much operate the same way. And Sonos has tried over the years to maintain kind of a common interface across the platforms. I think iOS 7, when that came out and the buttons all went away, Sonos really tried to update and be a modern looking app with iOS 7. And I think they have been walking that back very slowly and doing a lot better at identifying what is actually a button on their apps. One of the big ones is how to change rooms on a Sonos app. You just have to tap the room name at the top. For a long time, there was not even a little down arrow on there, and you had to figure out just by kind of poking around on the screen what was actually a button or not. They've gone a long way of improving that. It still isn't as good as it used to be, unfortunately. The old Sonos app that was along with iOS 6 and before was absolutely stunning and great. Unfortunately, some of the design decisions that came actually from external sources like Apple influenced Sonos so heavily, where I think they kind of messed up that user experience that they were so famous for, just a little bit. And they've slowly been working their way back. That said, I have clients of all age groups that can actually get in and use a Sonos system, no problem. So if you're worried about that, just don't. You'll be able to go in and figure out how to do most everything on a Sonos system, add music services, change volumes, all that. It's very intuitive once you kind of go over the initial page and how it works. So if you're worried about, using a Sonos system, just check that one off the list. It's very simple. Like I said, all age groups use it. I have 89-year-old clients that are using the Sonos system, no problem. So we've talked a lot about the software. We talked about how, what Sonos is, but we haven't talked about the products. And one of the first things I want to talk about on the products themselves is most every product that Sonos ships has a really cool feature. And this may sound dumb, but there's volume controls on the top. If you buy a Sonos speaker, there's a volume up, down, and what is a mute or pause button, depending on how old your equipment is. But I think they've pretty much called it a pause button now. But essentially, it just mutes the Sonos system really quickly. And the devices that don't have that, like the subwoofer, it just has an identification button. For the devices that do have all 3 buttons, you just press the volume up and the mute button or pause button at the same time, and that identifies it into the system. So let's talk about the speakers. There's 3 different types. There's a Play 1, a Play 3, and a Play 5. The Play 1 runs $199. It has 2 Class D amplifiers in it, which basically mean it runs fairly cool. Like you can put your hand on top of it. It's only slightly warm to the touch after it's been on and running for a long time. Those amplifiers are for both the tweeter and kind of a mid-woofer. This product was introduced really to compete with those Bluetooth speakers that you see that have gotten popular. I would say that at $199, it's way more expensive than those are going to be. But the sound quality is much better. It's not the best sounding speaker that Sonos has, but it does pack a lot of punch into a very small device, and it can get pretty loud. You don't have to worry about, overdriving it or anything. It'll probably annoy you about how loud it is before you just go ahead and turn it down. One of the key features on it, it's humidity resistant, which means it was designed for, bathrooms and whatnot. I'm going to throw a quick hint out there. Pretty much every one of the speakers are designed for humid areas. You can put them outside and have them play outside, but bring them in. Don't if you have a Play One and you want music out by your pool or something, plug it in outside for the party, and then don't forget to bring it in. I wouldn't leave them outside, especially in coastal areas and areas that have various temperature ranges. They will get ruined, but all the speakers are designed to be operated in humid environments. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Even if they don't say it, they are designed to do that. Now the Play one of the other reasons the Play One was introduced is that it could be used for rear channels in a 5.1 setup, which means that if you had the play bar in the sub, and we'll go over this in detail when we talk about those products later on, you can use the Play Ones and pretty much any other Sonos speaker for that matter as rear channel speakers. Those are the speakers that are traditionally behind you, that bring in the sound effects, that play music from time to time. They're very important in a surround sound system, and the Play One makes a great little speaker for that. There are some stands that you can buy, some aftermarket, third-party stands by Flexon, and I'll try and remember to put that in the show notes. Those speaker stands can set up in the back. Now, everybody says wireless is great, but you still have to plug wireless speakers in. They still need power. So if you're going to set any of the Sonos speakers up as rear channel speakers, remember you still got to get power to them. They don't run wirelessly. They're not battery powered. So just remember that as you're thinking about laying them out in a living room. One of my living room has a sofa that kind of extends out into the room, and that's where I would put them. But there's no table there. There's no power there. It would kind of be a bad idea for me to just put two little speakers out there. So what I would probably do is try and get some power either routed under the couch from the sidewall using an extension cord of some type, and use the Flex-On stands, or put some kind of table behind the couch to set those speakers on. The Play Ones can also be used as a stereo pair, which means in the software, you can set them up and say, in the living room, I want to have two Play Ones. I want this one to be left, this one to be right. And it just kind of gives you a little bit more oomph into the room, I suppose. I have done this a couple of times with my Play 3s, which have this same exact feature. And while it's great, I really didn't notice any difference between just setting them up as regular Sonos zones and combining them when I wanted to and just playing the same thing out of both speakers. The Play 3s, they're just a little bit bigger. They have a third Class D amplifier. They have a woofer. Their design's a little bit different, where it can be sat on its side. There's little rubber feet on it where you can bend it up, and it'll actually change some settings internally when it notices that it's setting on its side, so it'll sound just a little bit different. It has the same features as the Play One, minus that humidity thing, but really you can use them. They just don't say they are. It has a single Ethernet port on the back. I believe the Play One does as well. But there's the problem with the Play One and Play 3 that I have more than anything is there is no audio input. That you don't get till you go to the Play 5, which is a big speaker. This thing is 14 pounds, has that audio input that you can bring a line into and play an audio source into the speaker. These things are massive. They have 6 Class D amplifiers in them, dedicated speakers for each one of those amplifiers. They get loud, they sound great, but they're $499. They're $500 a speaker. And that's pretty expensive even if you go back and compare them to the old Play 5, which was $399. I still think I like that one a little bit better because it was a little more portable. You could pick it up. There's a speaker port in the back that almost acted like a handle, and I loved selling that and using it on lanais, where you could just pick it up, bring it outside, and plug it in. I'm sure you could still get the old Play 5 somewhere online. It's not a bad product at all. In fact, any Sonos, I'll say this, any Sonos product you can find online, like older Sonos product, if you see something called an S5, that's actually the Play 5. They just rebranded it a couple of years by. It's the same thing, and it gets the same software updates. Sonos has been excellent about pushing out those software updates to their products. And most all of the products are supported from some of the very beginning amplifiers and controllers. They're still in use today if they still work. I'll go over a couple of those model numbers and names if you're out there and you see them. They're still worth, to me, they're still worth grabbing because they work so well, and they still integrate into the Sonos system. You can still use a modern app to control them. They still work with the same music services. There are some limitations on them, of course, But like I said, to me, they're still great products. Let's move into what Sonos calls the home theater product line. A couple of years ago, they introduced the Play Bar. It's a $700 pricey soundbar that you can either hang from the wall under your TV, or you can set on maybe a piece of furniture in front of the TV. It's very thin design. It's wide. It's got 9 speakers in it with 9 Class D amplifiers. It works. It works relatively well. And I say relatively well because I'm not a big fan of how it sounds standalone. To really have the Play Bar do what it's supposed to do, you really have to add the sub in, and that's going to be another $700 for the sub. So for a 3.1 surround sound system, which is kind of what they say it is, that's going to run you about $1,400. But I'd say in the grand scheme of things, it's worth it. You don't have to pay for a center, left and right speaker, a receiver. All that goes away. The Play Bar connects directly to your TV. When it senses the audio playing out of the TV output, it instantly comes on. The remote for your TV or for your cable box, for example, can be used to intercept the volume control commands. And those volume control commands coming off the remote can be used to turn up and down the volume. They've done a really good job of just having a basic soundbar that works really well. I wish it did sound a little bit better, but I liked it enough. I liked being part of having a Sonos ecosystem enough. I put it in my own house. I only have the Play Bar now, but the sub is a must. I will get that one of these days. Just haven't gotten around to do it because, again, it is a $700 sub. I would say it's a great value on the sub, not such a great value on the Play Bar. Unfortunately, the Play Bar doesn't sound that great for the price, but the sub sounds pretty good for the price. Like I would put the sub up against some of the $1,000 and up, maybe $1,500 range subs that I have. The Play Bar, it's a little weak on the sound, but it's how you get integration with TVs into the Sonos system. So when I'm designing a system as a custom integrator, I go ahead and I put a TV on the wall, I put a Play Bar in, and I definitely put a sub for any room that needs a surround system or any room that needs to go ahead and have better sound, because the speakers that come on TVs these days are just absolute garbage. I mean, if anybody's bought a TV recently, aside from that Sony one that had the really nice speakers on the sides, the TV speakers are just, they're garbage. That's what they are. So the Sonos Play Bar gets you better sound, and at the same time, it's going to add in the ability to play Sonos, make it a Sonos zone in that room, which is awesome. That's what I was really looking for, and I think that's what most people who get a Sonos system and go ahead and get this type of setup are really looking for. And let's talk about some other products that they have. There's a Sonos Connect. Think about this. If you've already got a stereo system, you've already got the expensive receiver, you've got the speaker set up, you just want to have a Sonos zone for that room, get the Connect. It's $349. It's got an audio output on it for both analog and digital. It's got 2 digital outputs on it for better sound. You'll get better sound into the receiver basically, and your receiver can go ahead and take care of converting digital to analog rather than going into the receiver analog and trusting what's coming off of Sonos. They really do sound great using that digital output. It also has the analog input, which means just like the Play 5, you can go ahead and connect something going back into it. So maybe a CD player, or oh man, this is the where I have contention with Sonos so much is this is where they say to go ahead and plug in an AirPlay device, meaning that spend another $100 on an Airport Express, plug in the audio cable from the Airport Express to the Sonos, and that's, since it's an auto listen input, as soon as you start playing something out of AirPlay, it'll switch everything over on the Sonos system and play. But it's not great. It's not what I would like to see. I know Sonos could do better, but at the end of the day, the way AirPlay works and the way Sonos works is really 2 different things. And I understand why they haven't done it. I'm just so antsy for them to just do it and get it over with. AirPlay will set up each individual Sonos player as its own speaker, and it doesn't really do a good job of grouping them together. So you kind of have to go from one app doing the AirPlay back over to the Sonos app to do your groupings, and then back over to the other app to select the songs. It's kind of clunky. I don't like it, but I do have a way. I found a little program online. If you're comfortable doing command line stuff from the command line, there's an article I wrote on how to get Apple Music and AirPlay into the Sonos system using this really cool third-party application that somebody came up with that basically mimics being a radio station and on the Sonos side, but mimics being an AirPlay server on the Apple side. So it kind of bridges those two together. When you start playing on one, it'll pipe it out to the Sonos and start playing, which is, really at the end of the day, all I want. That covers the Connect. Don't really want to talk too much more about it. The Connect amp is another biggie for custom integrators and anybody who has speakers already in the house. It is a $500 Connect that has a pair of Class D amplifiers in it, so you can hook up to those existing speakers. They're 55 watts a channel, which is decent enough power to operate most speakers. It's got a subwoofer out on it, but that subwoofer out can't be used for 5.1. We'll talk about that later. The subwoofer out is great for a local third-party sub. What you do is you would just connect the Connect amp to the speaker wires that you have, and then you could run a subwoofer cable out from that Connect amp to the sub, and it'll take the low frequencies and pipe them down to the sub. Does a really good job of that. If you need that little extra boost in the room for just 2-channel stereo listening, works perfect for that. Like I said, this Connect amp, most people don't get this because the other speakers are so inexpensive. But if you already have the speakers in the house, if you've pre-wired your house for speakers and you're planning on installing speakers, the Connect amp is clearly the way to go. And most people, for some reason, don't know about this, but you can use the Connect amp as the rear speakers on a surround system. What this really does for me as an integrator, and what it's going to do for you, is if you already have speakers in the ceiling, just use those speakers in the ceiling. You're going to pay $500, but you're going to get a better experience out of it. And when you're listening to music out of the entire surround sound system, there's a setting in the app where you can go in and set it up and say, play the music at the same level on all the speakers when you're in music mode. When you go over to watch TV, it switches back over to the surround mode. So a great product. There's one more thing that they have. It's called the Sonos Boost. Most people don't need this, but it's a $99 bridge that goes from Ethernet to Sonos Net. It's the easiest way I can say it. If you have a big house and you only have one Sonos device, it's on the clear opposite side of the house as the router, you might need a boost. The boost basically is a supercharged bridge for Sonos Net. You plug it into your router. It's got an Ethernet port on it. It broadcasts Sonos Net really well to the other side of the house for you. I use them occasionally, but really having a boost is negated completely if you take and you plug in any hardwire Ethernet into any other one of the Sonos devices. So, the play bar is a good example. Most of the time it's up by a TV. There's a way that you can get an Ethernet cable from either the TV jack that's on the wall if you have structured wiring, or sometimes the router is even right next to the TV. Just make sure you get one device on the Sonos system hardwired and connected, and you don't really need to have the boost. It could even be the subwoofer. The subwoofer has an Ethernet connection on it, oddly enough. You can have the router sitting next to the sub, plug the sub into the router, and that's your one device that gets you online. Otherwise, you're going to connect and spend some time connecting the Sonos devices to your Wi-Fi. And while that's technically possible, as a professional, I don't recommend it. Definitely want to have one of the devices at least hardwired so you get the best connectivity out of it. If you do have to go wireless, make sure that you have a 2.4 gigahertz wireless system. Sonos doesn't support the 5, and that's pretty common in this day and age. When you have a dual router, which has both like the fast 5 gigahertz speeds and the slow 2.4, you can go ahead and just count on the most devices that are Internet of Things type devices needing that 2.4 gigahertz, and the 5, that's going to be your fast stuff like your computers and your iPhones and Android phones. That stuff's all going to connect that way. Some legacy products that Sonos has. I mentioned one before, the S5. That was rebranded as the Play 5. It's kind of a flat pancake speaker that existed before the current iteration of the Play 5. It's a great speaker. If you can get your hands on one, I would highly recommend it. I loved using that speaker. It's very portable, it's very lightweight, and it sounds great. The ZP120, that is the old model number for the Connect amp. They did a little bit of rebranding, and it's just kind of one of those products. I think there's a ZP90, and that's actually the Kinect. There's also an old ZP, and ZP sounds for Zone Player, but there's also Zone Player 100. It's discontinued, but it was updated to the Kinect amp. It had fewer inputs and outputs. I think it had 4 Ethernet switches on the back. While it had the amp, you could also use audio outputs on it. So it was kind of like a big, bulky version of what is now the Kinect amp. I definitely recommend getting that. The only caveat is, and we'll talk about this later, with the Zone Player 100, you can't use it as a rear surround sound as you could with the Kinect amp or the ZP120. It just won't do it. There are 2 touchscreens or 2 control screens that Sonos used to offer that were just awesome. The CR100, which is the old original Sonos control system, had 13 buttons and a jog wheel on it, which was pretty cool. A lot of clients liked using it. I don't see any problem with it, but what came out after was the CR200 was awesome. It's either one of these is awesome if they're working. And that's the big caveat to these. The CR200, actually, it's a touchscreen. It had a problem with the very bottom row of the digitizer just stopping and not working anymore. So if you find one new in a box, it's probably good for about 12 months is where I would put it on there. Anything after that, you're just buying your time with it because it will go bad. There was a big enough issue with them. Sonos just dropped them and stopped making them and suggested you go buy maybe a touch screen like an iPod or something to replace it. The reason I love these devices so much is because they had hardwired buttons on them for volume. So you could go over to them, and if somebody was calling your phone and you needed to mute your entire Sonos system, you could just reach over and press the mute button on it, and it would mute the entire system across the house. There's a couple of things that you can't do with the CR100 and 200 interfaces, like you can't rename rooms and you can't do a number of small interface things. But they are still supported. After all of these years, they are still supported. Sonos doesn't really update them that much. The interface still looks old and clunky, but I just think they were great devices while they were out. And while they're alive, I would suggest, if you can find one that works, I would suggest using it, and you probably would like it. So let's talk a little bit about how to connect a Sonos system up. Like I said before, you can use wireless. Make sure you have the 2.4 gigahertz. As you plug in a Sonos system and go open up the app, it'll walk you through doing everything you need to do to connect it either to your Wi-Fi or to connect it to a Boost. The Boost is what I recommend having. I've had better results with the old Bridge or the Boost. I run the Bridge at my house. That's an old legacy product too. I don't think I covered it, but if I didn't, it was $49. It didn't have the range as the Boost, so they introduced the Boost and everything got better, I guess. Now, the key, like I was saying before, the key with any Sonos system is making sure that one device gets plugged in to hardwired Ethernet. I'd highly, highly recommend that more than trying to connect to your Wi-Fi. The issue may not be with Sonos. It may not be with your router. It may just be interference in between. But I've had so much better luck setting up these systems using the hardwired connected method, which they call boost mode, than I have trying to get these things onto Wi-Fi and reliably work. So they will work out of the box. If you go to Target and pick up a Play 1 tonight, try and connect to your Wi-Fi, it'll work perfectly fine. But when you start adding more and more devices in, just trust me on this, you'll like it so much better when you add that hardwired internet connection in. The Sonos Net will kind of take over and kind of do its thing, and you're good to go at that point. There's some things that you can't do if you're running in Wi-Fi mode, or what they call standard mode. You have to have the Boost to set up a Sonos surround system. So let's talk a little bit about that. I've been kind of alluding to it. The Sonos Playbar by itself sets up a surround sound called 3.0. In surround sound terms, the 3 is the front 3 speakers, left, center, and right. And the 0, of course, is going to be the sub. Now, you can buy the sub and add it in and basically pair it with that Playbar through the app or any one of the softwares, and that makes it a 3.1. Perfect. Now, if we add the 2 rear surrounds in, we go out and we get 2 more Play 1, set them up behind the couch, that gives you a 5.1. So you have the left, center, right, the rear right and rear left speaker. Those are your 5 speakers. And the 0.1, that's going to be your sub. Now, you can use a Connect amp or the old ZP120, which is basically just a rebrand, for rear channel speakers. I will link to a support article on how to do this. But basically what happens is once you get everything identified into your Sonos app and you can see all the devices on there, you have to go find the IP address for the play bar. It's actually super easy. Sonos gives you a way to do this on all the apps and all the programs on the computers, where you can go in and figure out what play bar you need to get to. You type in on your browser the IP address of the play bar, :/wiredsat.htm. When you hit enter, you'll get little instructions on how to pair the play bar to the Connect amp. Now, the biggest caveat with this is you have to have a hardwired Ethernet plugged in to both the play bar and the Connect amp. There's no getting around this. And the reason I bring this up is you have a couple of options, though. You can bring a wire from the play bar to the Connect amp directly, or you can go through your house network. I do this often, especially in homes that have a big rack system. I'll put all of the Connect amps in the rack and wire the house traditionally. I bring all of the wires back into that rack, and then you have to have a house network. So the Sonos Connects all get connected to an Ethernet switch on the rack, and that Ethernet switch is tied into the house network, which gets back over to the play bar. I make sure that I get a Cat 5 and I plug it into that play bar. And doing that gives me the ability to set these two devices up in 5.1 surround sound mode. It's really good. And like I was saying before, you can actually set in the settings. You can tell it, hey, when I'm playing music, I want it to sound, all the speakers have the same level. I want to hear all of my speakers. I don't just want to hear the play bar. But when I go to surround sound, I just want to hear that play bar and give me the artifacts that need to come through the speakers, like sound effects and music and that kind of thing. For the movie I'm watching, make those come through the speakers in the ceiling. Now, one of the things I mentioned there, when I'm doing a big system and I have more than, maybe 2 zones, maybe if I have 4 or 5, 6, I've done about 10 or 12 before. What I want to do is have a Connect amp for each one of those zones. There is a way you can get around that, but it doesn't work as well. The ideal situation for Sonos, and it's really designed from the ground up to be 1 player per zone. And on the back of each one of those Connect amps are 2 Ethernet jacks. So I've seen this happen a lot where somebody brings in from the house network, they'll bring it into the first Connect amp, and then they'll loop out of that and go to the next one, and then loop out of that and go to the next one, and loop out of that one and go to the next one. And eventually what you're doing there is you're stacking switches right on top of each other, and that is just not a good thing to do. So the best thing to do is to bring all those back into a single Ethernet switch and run that into the house network, or that's probably part of the main house network already. The second best thing you can do is just hook up one and let Sonos Net take care of the rest. You don't want to be in a situation where you're looping in and out of these things to get a network set up in the rack. And that's through experience. I highly recommend hardwiring these things, but if you run into a situation where you're low on Ethernet ports, Sonos is a flexible enough system where you don't have to worry about wiring that wire into every single one of them. Just plug it into one of them and you shouldn't have too much of a problem. Now make sure that's the one that's running the surround sound if at all possible, right? Because that's where you want to have the surround sound speakers. It does require that Ethernet cable being plugged directly into the Connect amp. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is troubleshooting. Now, I've got this whole Sonos system set up. It's giant. It's got 16 zones of audio, 2 surround sound zones. Something's wrong. It doesn't work. What do I do? Well, on every single Sonos system, there's a hidden web page, which is really fun to get to because you can really get some information on what exactly is wrong and what you can do to maybe fix it, or at least it'll give you an idea of what to try. The first thing I want to talk about is the network matrix. Now, This is the troubleshooting king of all troubleshooting tools when it comes to Sonos. You want to use the network matrix when you have a device that's either falling offline or you can't figure out what's going on with it. You want to find out what the signal levels are to each device. This is where you go. Now, what you have to do is find out the IP address of any one of the Sonos devices on your network. And we talked about how to do this. It's in the app, and it's in the PC and Mac applications. Once you find the IP address, you'll type it in :1400/support/review. And the very last link on there is network matrix. If you click that and you see anything on the left-hand side that's red, that's a problem. You don't want to see that. There are a number of things that could cause that, but really what it means is the signal's too low to that device. You need to go ahead and move it around. What's really neat is in that support matrix, if you travel from left to right, you can actually see what the device is connected to. So let me give you an example. I have a Play 3 in the family room. And if I follow that from left to right, I can see that it has a green inbound connection, a great signal from the bridge that sits in my audio rack. Now, I have another Play 3 that sits in the master bedroom, and if I follow that left to right, it has the same connection to the bridge, but it's yellow. Now, yellow is not bad. You just want to not have red. So make sure that if you go in here, this will be a real quick way to identify problems. If you're seeing that a player is connecting to the network strangely, it may not have enough signal. You may have to move it around, or you may have to get a hardwired cable into it. But that's definitely something you want to take a look at. Another couple of cool links that are on there are the status pages, and that'll give you this massive list of networking status and device status. But I would say that support review screen is the place to go because of that network matrix, and only that network matrix. If you're having any problems with the Sonos system, that's where you go. There's also some basic network configuration tools. If you go to your IP address :1400/tools.htm, that'll bring you to a little, like ping and trace route. It's some more advanced stuff if you really have to get to it. I'd say 99% of your problems are going to be solved either by hardwiring one of the devices onto the network, or maybe going into the app and moving the Wi-Fi channel of SonosNet away from wherever you are now. And we've talked about this before, but I'll just kind of give you guys a refresher. Here in the States, there are 3 channels that do not overlap: 1, 6, and 11. You don't want to pick anything else. Pick 1, 6, or 11. If you open up your router's configuration, your access points configuration, and you can see that it's on channel 1, put SonosNet on 11. You're done. You don't have to do anything else. If you get a program that tells you what all of the Wi-Fi signals are around you in your neighborhood, and you can see that everybody is lining up on number 1, go into your router and move your router to 6, and then move SonosNet out to 11. And that'll make sure that your network is completely isolated, and the SonosNet's completely isolated from all that garbage that's going on in number 1. That can solve a lot of problems for you, especially if you have connectivity issues with Wi-Fi. Well, I think that about sums it up for Sonos. I hope that was a deep enough dive for you. If you still have questions, comments, reviews, anything you want to do, just let us know. Go over to HomeTech.fm/feedback and fill out the form, send it on in to us, or reach out to us on Twitter and let us know. You can also support the show by checking out our Patreon page, and that's linked off of our HomeTech.fm/support page. You could check out all the information, what you need to do if you'd like to financially support the show, or if you just like to drop us a few ratings on the iTunes store. We'd really appreciate that. Either way, we appreciate the feedback. I just want to thank everybody for sitting through this one and listening to me ramble on about Sonos. I know for some integrators out there, this is probably one of the more boring episodes, but we do have a wide audience, and there have been a lot of people asking about where to start. And I'm hoping in the future we can go ahead and get Jason back in on the conversation here and have a further conversation on where to start with home automation and lighting control and all those good things. I definitely think we'd be able to do that here in the very near future. So keep on listening, and we'll see you next week.